Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. I hope you're doing well today. I have a book review for another classic Goosebumps book from the old 62 classic books from back in the 90s, the series that started it all. And I'll tell you this, I've had this particular copy of this book for ages. I've never bought another copy of it, and I thought I had read this book. There's evidence of possibly reading this book, of like some pages being folded, which I used to do back in the 90s. We kids were taught to fold the pages in the corners of our books to mark our spot if we didn't have bookmarks. And I used to do that. And to my knowledge, I've never seen the TV adaptation of this, which I plan on watching in a moment. It's raining outside, kind of stormy, mostly just rain, no thunder or lightning, anything like that. So God forbid if it actually is scary, I won't have the power go out on me. God willing. So, this book, man oh man, this one completely shocked me by how much fun this was on a rainy day, on a darker day. I didn't read it till tonight. It's about 3 a.m. right now. I'm just kind of hanging out by myself, reading a little bit. My wife went to bed, and I will tell you one thing. This old book, The Headless Ghost, this is so creepy. And I really, I will say this constantly, I highly recommend this book. I don't think I've ever read it. I love the cover, which has always kind of creeped me out. It's one of those really good Jacobus covers of the ghost holding his own head. And I will tell you this particular copy was the re-release, by the way, with the yellow and all that. Back in the reprint days, the first ever reprints that were made, where not all 62 books were put out again. Got this at a book fair, or it might have been the skating rink birthday party. I'm pretty sure it was the skating rink birthday party, now that I think about it. There was book fairs where I got copies too, but I'm fairly certain this was part of the skating rink birthday party where I had Night of the Living Dummy and Stay Out of the Basement, and I think there was Bad Hair Day possibly as well. I think Welcome to Dead House was one of the ones that I either got from that skating rink birthday party that I've talked about a lot on this channel over time. But anyway, there's a lot of the reprints that I had from when I was a kid. Most of the books I've collected in recent years, as you guys know, from right before I started this channel. This book here, I'm almost certain, once again, that I don't think I've ever read this book, because it's so good. It's one of the best that I've ever read. It completely shocked me by how effective this was, how atmospheric The Headless Ghost is. I know this is an odd intro to one of these reviews, but it's mostly because I'm just kind of shocked by how good and how effective this was. I just started reading it yesterday. It's been a while since I've really had time to just sit down and read a Goosebumps book in a couple of days like I used to do in the early days of the channel before I was married, and so many things where I had more free time to do things like that. I have a lot of obligations the older I'm getting. That's just happening more and more with work, as you guys know. But to see a book, as a big urban legend fan, and to see a new Goosebumps book, or not really new, but new to me in a lot of ways, reading one, watching an episode adaptation, or reading a comic book adaptation, or anything like that, to see something that I get so invested in, something that I've passed by on a bookshelf over and over again, that I've had since I was a kid and never really experienced it as far as I know, and to have that become one of your favorite things in the Goosebumps franchise, or whatever thing you love, Star Wars, any of that stuff, there's a particular feeling that comes along with that. And that's kind of how I feel with this book. As you guys know, like I said, I love the urban legend feel to many of the Goosebumps books. Not all of them, not even most of them, but many of them. There are the ones that I love a lot, like You Can't Scare Me, or Ghost Camp, that have this very effective atmosphere to them, of an urban legend type of thing that may or may not be true. I love stuff like that, and I love when it's really effectively done by R.L. Stine, the way he does things. I also love books that are kind of like Let's Get Invisible, for example, that have this kind of cover that suggests kind of a sillier story, if you will. But then you actually read the book, and it's more of just genuine atmosphere and terror, a little bit of mystery in there, a little bit of haunting eeriness to it, and that's what the Headless Ghost book is. And I cannot wait to watch this episode tonight, on this rainy night in a moment. After I record this, I'm going to record the video for that too after I watch that episode, because I don't want it to be tainted on whether the episode might be bad or not, because this book was so good. I want this review to be a passionate review coming from a place within me that just really tells you how much I enjoyed this. If you love Ghost Camp, if you love You Can't Scare Me, check out The Headless Ghost. Anyway, after like 5 minutes of rambling and mystique and pretentiousness, let me start off with how this book is, or what the actual story of it is. It's basically about a boy and a girl. What are their names? Dwayne and Stephanie, who are obsessed with scaring their neighborhood. And they pull little pranks here and there. And I thought that would kind of be the general focus of this book, maybe a little bit of a haunted house book. But I was surprised by what this book is. It's very different from a lot of Goosebumps books I've read. And I think most people who have read this would agree with that. So I'm kind of curious to see what this episode's going to be like when I go to watch it. Essentially, they have a local house that's apparently haunted. And I'll get into that urban legend in a moment, just to kind of recap a little bit of those details in case you don't know anything about it. And they love horror stories, they love ghost stories specifically, and it kind of goes along with them haunting their neighborhood and freaking people out with all their little pranks and whatever. So there's a particular place in their neighborhood that's called Hill House, which I love as a name because it's a reference to The Haunting of Hill House, the Vincent Price movie that I love so much. It's one of my favorites. It's terrifying. It's an old black and white film. You can also see it in color. It's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, and I will stand by that. I love it. It's very effective, very goofy towards the end, but still very effective, very creepy. Again, you should watch it on a rainy night, really. They are obsessed with the tours that they can go on in that house and seeing the history of this house. They kind of know it by heart. They love it so much, and the legends surrounding that house. There's some legends about the guy who built the house, who apparently died before he could actually even come to enjoy the house. His wife died in the house. There was a young boy who apparently like 100 years ago was in the house and came across the spirit of that man who built the house, who died before he could get into the house. And I think it was a captain or something. But this young boy met that ghost, and that ghost apparently had him trapped. And by ghost logic, in this book, he had to pull this boy's head off of his body. Now, let me say this. That probably sounds like a little bit of a gruesome detail, and it kind of is. There's this idea that there's a young boy named Andrew walking around inside of this house, that these tours are being done and looking for his head. All these hundreds of years, or this 100 years, or whatever it is. And apparently if he comes across you, he's probably going to trap you and try to take your head. So this book, I want to make it very clear, there's not really a plot to it. Because Dwayne and Stephanie basically just decide at one point they're going to stay inside of this house and try to go away from one of the tours, hide out in there, spend the night in there. And it kind of becomes a 2-day affair because of some certain things that happen. I don't want to get into too many spoilers or anything. This is a spoiler-free channel, as you guys know. And essentially, while they're in this house, they encounter some things. But I do want to make it very clear, like I said, this is kind of a plotless book. There's not really much of a plot aside from these two trying to really explore more of this house. There's certain levels and rooms and stuff you aren't allowed to go into on the tour, especially being kids. They shouldn't be there to begin with in after hours. That feeling of being in a place you shouldn't be and the atmosphere to it is so eerie and so unsettling for whatever reason. This book in particular is one of those books like Let's Get Invisible that just very much gets under my skin. I don't know what it was about it. I don't know what specifically that Stein did with the atmosphere that made it so scary. There's just something about this book. And again, with this cover here, you got this mildly smiling ghost here. You know, this guy kind of looks like an ugly Brendan Fraser from back in the Mummy days. And that cover is this book that gets to me so deeply for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it does. I didn't look at this cover all these years and expect the kind of book I got. And even if I did read it before, I didn't remember anything about it. There are books like Stay Out of the Basement and Not a Living Dummy that I've read over and over and over again over the years of my collection. Even the small collection I had before I started this channel up. And to have this book get to me the way it did is unbelievable to me. It shows the talent of Stein. Now with that being said, I like Dwayne, I like Stephanie. They're not the best Goosebumps characters ever. What kids ever are. You know, Carly Beth might be the big one for you in all of the books that you might actually really enjoy a character of. But they don't really stand out all that much. I just kind of, they're alright, whatever. But it's about the house, Hill House, and this lore and this urban legend that got to me so much. This is on the shorter side too. It's about 113 pages, and it flies by. It flies by. Now, again, with it being kind of mildly plotless, most of it's the experience of going through this house and what we're finding and what we're seeing and some things we're coming across over this couple of days that we spend with the house mainly. There's not really any focus on school. I don't think school makes an appearance in this book at all. Maybe not even mentioning the house or the schools much at all, which is odd for a Goosebumps book. They are middle grade books. They typically have at least one scene in a school. I don't think there was anything in here referencing school at all, which was cool. I like that. It was something so different. You know, it really didn't mess up the pacing or anything of the book. But it was, again, unsettling is the word for me to use here. Kind of like Ghost Camp, kind of like You Can't Scare Me. And don't forget the fact that all of these books are Stein books. They have that little bit of childish flair to them. They're not extremely gruesome. They're not extremely gory or anything like that. It's just the way he tells the story is so good, and I really love it. I just think it's a fantastic read. And again, I'm going to be so disappointed if I go to watch this episode adaptation in a moment, and if it's bad, it's really going to bum me out. I'm going to be honest with you. It's probably going to break my heart a little bit because of the kind of rating I'm going to give this review, or this book. As you can tell, I'm clearly a fan of this. I clearly really, really enjoyed this. I highly recommend Headless Ghost. If you haven't read this book, you're missing out. You're missing out on a great read. You're missing out on one that I have had recommended to me constantly. I've put it off because I wanted to fill in the gaps of books that are probably not going to be very good. And I've had some surprises and I've had some not so big surprises. I've had some goods, I've had some duds, I've had a lot of different things. But I'll tell you, Headless Ghost, I did not expect to enjoy as much as I did. I'm kind of just trying to finish up the classic books here. I think I had like 6 or 7 more, 8 more. This is one of the ones that kind of just shocked me a little bit by how much I liked it. This was such a good one. Why is this book so good? The Headless Ghost. If you have not read this book, you're missing out. You are missing out big time. Big time. Seriously, this is a really great one. I highly recommend it, especially if you're more of an atmospheric reader. Like if you like the tones of stories, the feelings of them that they give you. This is one for the ages for that feeling. I tell you that immediately. And immensely. When it comes to Headless Ghost, after all this poetic waxing of my... or waxing? Yeah, waxing. I don't know why I said waxing. For all of this poetic nature of my speech about this book and how much I enjoyed it, it's probably a boring review, but I'll be honest with you, this book for me on a 5-star basis is a 5 out of 5 stars. I think it works. I think the ending works. I think everything about the book works. I love how different this is, how refreshing this is from so many Goosebumps books I've read. And for this to be in the original 62-book series days, I can only imagine what it would have been like reading this book as a kid. It would have scared me to death because of that brick wall type of cement room, stone room type of house that we're dealing with here. It's probably not even a large house like a mansion or anything. It's just a mildly sized house, a few levels sized house, nothing immense. And that house, the feeling of being in there is just real. I really like it. My imagination just went completely wild reading this book. I had such a blast with that aspect of it. When it comes to Headless Ghost, like I said, 5 out of 5 stars for me. I think it's amazing. Genuinely one of the best Goosebumps books I've ever read in my life. I don't know where I would put this in my ranking, because I have a list on my phone of every Goosebumps book that I've read ranked worst to best. I don't even know where I'd put this, but this is probably up in my top 10, top 15, 20, somewhere in there. It's a great one. It's so effective. It's so scary. There's something about it that just gets to me so badly. I know we've had a lot of ghost-focused books in the Goosebumps franchise, and just in children's media and everything else. I get all that, but I'm telling you, give this one a chance. If you don't like ghost stories all that much, but you like atmospheric stories, you should read this one. I think it's a really good one. I think it will affect you in a lot of ways that people don't really expect Goosebumps to get to them. If someone ever tries to tell you that Goosebumps is a kid's book series, tell them to pick this book up. Tell them to read this one. Tell them to read Haunted Mask 1 and 2, or Wanted the Haunted Mask. Tell them to read Ghost Camp, You Can't Scare Me. You tell them to read Let's Get Invisible, and tell them to come back and tell you that it's a kid's book series. Because I think adults, myself reading many of those books, if not all of those books as an adult for the first time ever, I will tell you, they are not children's books. They are genuinely scary with a little bit of child's humor in there, but enough to really freak you out. Genuinely. And that's as a horror fan, somebody who grew up on horror his whole life and still watches a lot of scary horror movies. This is great. This is a great read. I recommend it highly. Have you guys read The Headless Ghost? What did you think about this amazing little read? I'd love to hear what you have to say down in the comment section down below. Sorry to take so long to get a review out for this book over the years. I know many of you, I think Grayson especially, is one of the ones who have asked me constantly to review this book. And I just kept putting it off. I wasn't really thrilled about it. I didn't really remember reading it or anything. I don't think I ever did, even though I think there's some folded pages in here that I saw. But I'm telling you, I don't remember reading this book. And I almost want to kick my own butt for not reading this back in the day because it's so good. I think I would have liked this more than Night of the Living Dummy, even though I love Slappy and Mr. Wood and all those characters. I think I would have loved this deeply when I was a kid because of how good it is. Anyway, what did you think about this book? Did you think that tension that kept building throughout this book was getting better and better? What did you think about this? I want to know what other people think. The typical passing casual Goosebumps fan might not like this that much. It doesn't feel like Goosebumps most of the time. It feels to me like what I consider the best of Goosebumps, you know? Anyway, what are your thoughts? Put all that down below. I'm going to go watch the episode in the dark. I'm going to do a review after that for the episode on camera, so hopefully you guys will be here for that and tune in for it. And we shall see. So, put your thoughts and comments down below. Again, 5 out of 5 stars for me. I know this is a lengthy review. I know it's a rambling and repetitive review. I don't care. This is a good book. I want to spend as much time as I can possibly spend talking about how much I love this book. It shocked me so badly how good it was. Not like it has like the most amazing cliffhangers or plot twists, just that atmosphere, man. That atmosphere is so good in here. If you want a great example of how to write atmosphere, read H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and read this. I'm telling you, man, you will pick up so many good writing cues if you're a writer out there. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. God bless you, and goodbye.